Alright, this week I want to talk about something called MySQL Workbench. So if you've ever used MySQL or MariaDB or any kind of SQL database that uses MySQL or MariaDB, then you've probably noticed that there's generally a lack of tools out there for really working on a graphical user interface side of it. And if you're coming from the Microsoft world where you probably had SQL Server, Management Studio, SSMS, you may miss that quite a bit because that is a really tremendous tool. So I've used PHPMyAdmin in the past, for doing things, on an online site, starting up like a WordPress SQL database, something like that. But in the past, I just haven't found something that was really great. And a few years ago, I came across MySQL Workbench. And at the time, I don't believe it was fully open source. It was owned by Oracle. And you could get it for free, but you had to register with them and give them an email address and all kinds of stuff, which, it's fine. I get it. People want to collect information about who's using their stuff, but I'm always worried that eventually that information is going to be given to somebody else for advertising, those kind of things, which, not ideal. But I went ahead and did it. I was working on a project. It was an open source project for a friend with my Linux group. And I wanted something where I had a little bit more view into what I was doing. I'm just, as far as terminal, I love the terminal and things, but when I'm doing SQL stuff, I'm not a SQL guru. So having the opportunity to kind of use this type of tool just really came in handy. So I wanted to introduce it to you guys. And since we've done that, it looks like it's become open source, completely. It's not an Oracle thing anymore. There's MySQL Workbench Community Edition, and you can get it for free, and it's open source, and it's free to use. So from here, if you click on downloads, this is going to take you to the Enterprise Edition download. So this is a download where you would have this for enterprise or professional level use, things like that, where you're paying them and you get support and a few extra features and a slightly newer version. What happens is as that version goes out, it'll become the Community Edition, and then new versions come out for Enterprise. But when you're on this main page, if you click here for Download Now, you'll come to the page where you can get the Community Edition. And right here you'll see it's 8021 as of this recording. So here you want to select your operating system. So if you're using Windows, you can go ahead and get it for Microsoft Windows, Ubuntu, Red Hat, Fedora, and then Mac OS. And then if you have a different distribution, you can get the source code and just compile it from source as well. Since I'm using Ubuntu, this is the one that I went ahead and got. And whenever you do this, then it gives you a list of different packages that you can get for your Ubuntu version. In my case, I went ahead and got the x86 64-bit Debian package here. Now there's a few different things. So this is 2004, so just pay attention to the version of Ubuntu you're getting it for. Here's 1804, and since I'm on Zorin OS, it's technically 1804 Ubuntu, so that's the one that I grabbed and downloaded. Once you've downloaded that, you'll have it in your downloads folder. So I'll open up my downloads folder here. And you'll see right here is MySQL Workbench, and there it is. So it's just a .deb file. Now, you can double click this thing and it's going to open up the software manager, and it'll try to do the install. When you open up your terminal, unless you have it set in a specific way, it'll come to your home folder. So you just type in CD and then downloads. Make sure you spell it the same way and capitalize it correctly. Then you can do ls to see all of the packages you have in your downloads folder. So in this case, I'm interested in MySQL Workbench, and it's a .deb file. So we're going to use sudo dpkg-i, and then I'm going to start typing MySQL there, and then I'm just going to hit tab to finish it. And when you do that, it's going to go out and try to install this Debian package. Now I've already installed this, but the first time that I run it on this version of Ubuntu, this 1804 version, it gives me an error, a little dpackage error that it says there's a dependency problem. Don't sweat that. If you see that, the way that you fix it is you then type sudo apt install -f, like force. So sudo apt install -f. When you do that, it's going to prompt you, it'll prompt you for your sudo password. I've already put mine in during this session. And then you'll basically just have to let it run through. Once you've done that, you do it again. You do the dpackage install command again. So sudo dpkg-i and then MySQL, and then tab, and it'll finish it, and then hit enter. And this time it's going to run through, and it should install everything with no problem. The issue is that for whatever reason, dpackage doesn't go out and just get that dependency for you. You have to tell it, go force install that dependency for me, and then install the package after that. So once you've done that, you'll have MySQL Workbench installed. And we'll just exit out of this. All right, I'm going to open up the MySQL Workbench. And there you go. Now you can see it. So I'm going to make this fit into my screen a little bit better here. So when you first come in, it'll look like this. It'll be pretty empty and it'll give you the welcome message. What we want to do is add a SQL Server. So we're going to click on the add button. We're going to give it a name. And in this case, mine is a laptop and it's out of my office. If you're accessing your local MySQL with MySQL Workbench, then you can leave this defaulted here. You just want to put in the correct username and password for it. In my case, it's a remote. Now, if you're trying to connect to a remote MySQL system, you need to make sure that MySQL and MariaDB has been set up to be accessed remotely. By default, they're always set up to be only accessed through localhost. So you'll have to go out and find a tutorial on how to do that. I don't want to cover that in this video. It's a little bit outside of what we're doing, but I'm going to go ahead and put in the IP here, and then I'm going to change the username. There we go. Alright, so I've got my password stored into my system's storage keychain. And once you click the OK button, this is what you're going to see. So as you keep adding more and more databases to your MySQL Workbench, you'll see more cards where you just click on the card to connect to that server. So I'm going to click on the card. It wants to have my password for the SQL Server. And here we go. So it brings me right into the SQL editor where I can start writing some SQL queries if I want to. So when you look at the interface, up here in the upper left, you'll see that there's this administration tab. And if you look, there's arrows on each side. So you can move between tabs with those arrows. But if I expand this out just a little bit, now I can see both tabs actually. So it's a little bit easier than going back and forth. Now as you come in, there's a lot of really cool features in MySQL Workbench. So if you look over here, there's a lot of nice stuff you can click on. I want to show you a couple of things, but I'll let you kind of discover the rest for yourself. So first of all is the dashboard. When you click on the dashboard, it's going to open up something very similar to this. And I don't have anybody actively using the actual database and the server that I'm connecting to right now. It's just for home personal use. But here you can see you start to get a little bit of information that starts graphing over time. And so you can always come back and check the database, especially if you do have more usage and more users. Now for me, the colors, I don't know why, this is very hard to see, but that's a black box with very gray or dark colored text in it. So it's really hard to see on the hover, and I'm not sure why it's like that. I don't know if it thinks it's in dark mode or something. But at any rate, just know that when you hover, there is information there. It's a little bit difficult to read, at least for me it is. So, you know, at your own risk, kind of check out those things as well. Now this opened up a tab when I clicked on the dashboard, so I can go back to my query just by clicking on the tabs at the top, and I can open more query windows in tabs as well if I want to. So as you would expect, there is table data that we can get to here. So I'm going to actually expand this eBay info table, or this eBay data table, and in here you can click on tables. And then you can see that I have a table called eBay info. And then of course here you can click and you can see actual other information, and you can just keep drilling down to see the columns of information and so on. So if you're used to SQL Server Management Studio, this is a really similar system. And if I want to see some information from this table, I can right click on it just like that, and I can say select rows limit 1000. So as soon as I click that, you see that I get the query that it wants to run. So it actually puts in the query text for me, which is select star, which is everything from the table, from the database and the table, and then a semicolon to finish off that statement. Here you can see that it shows you in the query results area what you asked for. So this is going to have 1000 results basically, which is what we asked for. So limit to 1000 rows. Now if I want to change this, I can just click on this little drop down, and I can say, you know what, I only want 200 rows. And then what I can do is, because this is the only statement here, I can just click on the little lightning bolt, and it's going to rerun it. Now I've got my results, and this time I've limited it down to 200 rows instead of 1000 rows. Now let's just say that I add another statement. So it also gives you, as you type, you can see that it gives you some help, some hints for things that you could actually use. So I'm just going to hit tab to finish that. and then I'm going to say is greater than 1. Now, that assumes that quantity sees this as a number. We'll find out here in just a minute. I'm going to put a semicolon to finish my statement. So I've got two different select statements here that are selecting from the same database and the same table, but they're doing things slightly differently. So I'm going to highlight this statement that I want to run. So what you do is you highlight the one that you want to run, and then again you click on the little lightning bolt. And now it's only going to bring back the data into the query results window for what I asked for. So in this case we can see that on these the quantity is 2. Now if I want to go back and run the original one, I just highlight it, click the little lightning bolt, and I get my results right here in the query window, and I've rerun the original query. So using the query window is really nice, but if you want to separate these out into different queries for some reason, you can do that. So we haven't added anything yet on query 1, so we can actually go use this area as another place to type in query data. Once you've typed out a bunch of queries and you're getting data back that you like, if you want to keep those things, you can save those queries. I'm going to go open one that I've saved just to save some time here. So these are a bunch of scripts that I run whenever I import data for my wife's business from her eBay stuff. So that's the data that you were kind of seeing over here on this tab, here that's coming back. So when I import this data, it comes to us as a CSV from eBay. I can open it up real quick and make some modifications to make things actual dates and times and stuff like that. And then I run a bunch of scripts that basically sets up the day name for things that were sold on and the month name where they were sold. And then I also run some scripts that adjust the monetary values that are in the CSV, which are just a string, and actually turns them into a number that can be evaluated. So I have a bunch of little scripts here, and I don't want to lose this, and I don't want to have to rewrite this every month when I import a new CSV file for her. So I've got this saved, and as I make modifications, I just click on the save button and it saves it right back to that file. So just like anything else, if you save the queries that you're writing, it'll prompt you to give it a name, and then it'll save it in a location that you choose. So that makes it really handy to get back to those scripts that you want. So as you look up here at the top on your file menu, you've got pretty normal file menu options, and then edit. You do have preferences. Now one thing you might run across, and I want to give you this little warning, is the thing that I see sometimes is when I open it up, I install this new and I want to edit something in a database and I want to run these scripts, I get an error message. So down here you can see that there's a log of what I've been running for different scripts, and it tells me, hey, here's what was returned: 1,000 rows, 200 rows, 5 rows, 200 rows. Sometimes it'll tell you there was an error trying to run your script, and it'll help you understand why. Maybe you wrote something incorrectly. But occasionally I get one where I have to go in here and I go to the SQL editor section, and there is this little checkbox if you scroll down that says safe updates. Now this is probably a good thing most of the time, but when I'm trying to run updates on purpose, it doesn't actually let me run the updates on the data that I want because this box is checked by default. So if you ever run into that error and you're saying to yourself, no, I need to update this data, then you want to come into Preferences, go to the SQL editor, come down here and click on this little checkbox to uncheck it, and then save. Once you do that, close out of MySQL Workbench, reopen it and reconnect, and then you should be able to run those queries you were trying to run. So just a little tip for the pros there, just something to save you some frustration. There's lots of preferences you can change in there, and then you've got a query menu that will help you out with different things. You've got the database menu to help you out with different things, and there's just a ton of tooling built into the MySQL Workbench, which is really great because it's something that I was looking for a long time, and this really gives me that feel of, hey, this is not just something that's made as a toy. It's not something that's made as just a project on the side. It's really something serious. MySQL has been serious forever. But MySQL Workbench, I really feel like, is just a tremendous tool for working with MySQL databases, MariaDB databases. So one last little bit of information is down here at the bottom side of the left panel, you can see there's a couple of tabs. So there's the object information that tells me about the table, but there's also server information that I can see here about my server. So it's a little bit interesting. This is the name of the server connection, the IP address, the port that it's running on, the user that's being basically used in order to log in. Whether or not I'm using SSL, which is on my own local network, I can't access it from the outside anyways. And then product, Ubuntu 18.04, and so on. So you can kind of see a little bit of information about what's going on there as well. So that's MySQL Workbench in a quick nutshell. I hope that you get something really good out of this. I hope this is a tool that you'll like and that you'll be able to use. I hope it's something that you find useful as you move forward in your endeavors of self-hosting anything where you might need to connect to a database that's using MySQL. If you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, tell your friends about it so they can come along on the journey with us. I want to say a special thank you to my patrons over at Patreon and everyone who subscribes to the channel. I truly appreciate your support. It really keeps me motivated to keep doing these videos and providing you more information about amazing open source, free software that you can self-host. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you next time.